tell you. It's your fault.
There's nothing making sense.
Do this. Fix right.
Do it.
The curiously named Flying Lotus directs the movie Ash, where he also has a small role. But this one stars Eiza, González, Aaran Paul from Breaking Bad, and Iko Uwais. And this is kind of a mind-bending science fiction movie with some horror elements. So the story focuses on this woman who wakes up without any memory. She has amnesia. And it appears she's on some type of alien planet in a some type of craft, and the crew of this cast appears to have been murdered in bloody fashion. And this alien planet seems to have a limited amount of breathable atmosphere, but it soon turns toxic, so she has to retreat back into this ship, this down ship. She meets fellow survivor Aaran Paul, and they have to figure out what's going on. What has killed the people, what has happened to the mission that is kind of revealed as, she starts to regain some memories and flashbacks and stuff like that. Is there another type of entity on this planet? What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this is a very flashy movie, albeit it's not like a mega budget movie. It looks very much like a music video, and I mean that in a positive and negative. Now I believe Flying Lotus is actually involved in the music industry, so this could explain it. But let's talk about it. So it is quite visually experimental. It's quite ambitious with its visuals. The direction here feels like a music video, but and as such it's very kinetic. It's very sort of you don't really have like long kind of like substantive shots. Everything is kind of quick cuts and sort of different angles and stuff like that, so you constantly feel like you're moving in this movie. And the director here has tried to use like different angles and stuff to kind of create like this sense of like a dynamic feeling and things like that. And in some respects I think it makes it feel very much like a stylistic style movie, and it's quite interesting because of that. The direction here is somewhat sort of unique to a degree, and it has an interesting premise. I think because our central character has amnesia, you go into the movie like with her without really much idea about what's kind of going on, and you follow the story as she starts to uncover what has happened, and we kind of learn more and more about what has happened to her team, what has happened on this planet. There are some great sort of visuals here, both kind of CGI enhanced and practical. Now, they've made a good job of making this planet look quite alien. It looks like it's on green screen a lot of the time. It is a low budget movie, but nonetheless, I think some of the kind of the trippy visuals here make for an intriguing idea for a different world, a very kind of like dreamlike world in many ways, with kind of lots of things that kind of go on, that some of which aren't really explained. Like there's a sequence where she sort of sees like a silhouette of herself, and it's kind of mirroring what she's doing, but it doesn't really ever explain it. Things like this, and it has this kind of like technicolored sky and stuff. And then we get this sort of some reasonable gore effects in this movie. There's even a sequence that will remind you of John Carpenter's The Thing. Not quite as groundbreaking as that, I'll just say. And it is a little bit on the low budget, but I appreciated the spectacle, and that was a fun sort of sequence. And that is the kind of the more of the horror elements here. There are sort of some sequences here that do go into kind of quite gory and gross territory. Although I would say the movie more is a sci-fi movie. It's kind of an exploration about what has actually happened, and these kind of science fiction ideas about going to another world and dealing with the kind of the technology at the time and things like that. So it has some neat ideas. And obviously the movie is very character driven as well, because our main character has amnesia. You sort of feel like you do go on the journey with her. You've got a reasonable cast here as well. So, you know, everyone here is somewhat experienced in regards to the acting, or at least the kind of the main players here. So I think, you know, you have the actors taking it kind of somewhat kind of seriously at least, and I think giving, you know, at least solid performances here. You know, the movie doesn't outstay its welcome. I feel it's quite punchy, and I say because this kind of visual, stylized sense that you get here makes the movie feel like it's kind of rattling on at a kind of a fair rate. So what doesn't work? So let's go back to that music video kind of style here. I think it works the positive and the negative, because I do think the flashy visuals can be a little bit nauseating at times, to be honest, and you feel like it's a little bit overdone, and you feel like it's a music video rather than a narrative. And I think this is the problem here. It's like the director here clearly has a definite visual flair that he wants to kind of put onto the movie and make it this kind of sort of surreal, trippy experience, but at the same time, I actually think it doesn't benefit to have a solid narrative. Now, the story, in actual fact, is not that complex. It's a relatively simple story, and you can kind of pretty much guess where it's going, I would say. But I think the movie almost makes it feel like it's a little bit more convoluted than it actually is, because it ends up having these very kind of like flashing lights and flashbacks and quick cuts and kind of like weird camera angles and movements and things like that, because it wants to have this sort of like stylized direction that in some aspects does look cool, but at the same time I think you more are like watching the camera like whiz around and stuff like that, rather than sort of following the story. And I think at times this movie needed to have a little bit more of real character moments here. Aaran Paul's character, for example, I really didn't feel added anything. I mean, it's an excuse to have, you know, this woman talk to someone, because the rest of the crew are dead, and we see like flashbacks and stuff, so we do get some dialogue sequences for that. But she needs someone to kind of verbalise with ultimately. But I didn't really feel like his character added much, to be honest with you. He felt like it was like a bit of a nondescript character that wouldn't have had a huge amount of plot had he, you know, plot difference had he not kind of been there. You know, he's fine in it, but it didn't really feel like his character meant much to the film. And like I say, sometimes I think this movie wandered into kind of visual diarrhea. Sometimes the visuals I just think go a little bit overboard, and it needed to calm down just sort of a little bit to make it look less like a kind of like an effects showreel or a flashes from like a music video, and actually more like a story at some point. But I will give it a 6 out of 10. I think it is quite, as I say, visually interesting, and it does have some pretty good science fiction ideas and sequences, and as I say, a couple of gory sequences. I don't want to say too much about where it goes, because the plot isn't actually that dense when it comes down to it. But I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.